Welcome to the high place. Again. Not as windy today, so hopefully not so much a problem with hearing me. Already made my prayers coming up for the most part. I didn't have any sage. I felt bad about that. But then I remembered there's sage everywhere in the desert. And there's actually a sage plant right here. Way up on this promontory. Stone, sand, and sage grows. Gotta tell you something, right? It's a sign. It's a sign. Takes a while to slough off the, the energy dissipate, the energy that seems to stick to you. I talk about it being like, EMF or RF, electromagnetic or radio frequency radiation. And it's interesting, years ago, one of my teachers, Abdiyasadi, he used to say, or advise about turning off like all the Wi-Fi and router equipment in your house at night, so at least when you sleep, you're not bathed in that. It's really hard when you're in the city because you're just getting it from everyone, everyone all around you. I mean, there's no getting out of the Wi-Fi radiation, and the cities are getting more problematic with the installation of the 5G, and we'll go into that whole thing and the conspiracy theory around that, but it's really hard to get away from it, and it really has a profound physiological effect, but when I say profound physiological effect, it's like, I feel a difference when I come out here, and there's none, because there's no cell tower within probably 30, 40, 50 miles. So there's no RF radiation out here, EMF radiation. And if there's ever going to be some, it's going to be probably from low orbit satellites. I don't know if you've ever heard of Starlink and Elon Musk and Bill Gates, but putting up upwards of 40,000 low orbit, basically disposable, short life satellites to bathe the planet in 5G for the most part. So it's getting to be where we can't get away from it, get out from under it, and more and more I think we're going to have to grapple with what that means. Whether you buy into that whole thing or not. Nikola Tesla talked about, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy and frequency. Guy was a genius. And that has been my experience in terms of, my yogic path and my medicine path, and, over the years, the way that I understand things and the way that I experience things, because I'm not very visual, is very energetic. Everyone's got their own way of experiencing the world, and the liminal space, the sacred spaces and those kinds of things, sacred space. probably won't continue these things, not out of, they're not popular or anything like that, but I don't feel like I can do any kind of justice to my feelings and my experience and my thoughts. If I'm down there, when I mean down there, like, away from like the high place, and I come up here and I pray, and I pray all the way up here, so that I'm as clean as I can be, impeccable as I can be, so the thoughts aren't quite as jumbled and incoherent, and trying to get out of the way, for the most part. And so when I leave Las Vegas, even if I don't leave Las Vegas, or whatever the case may be, I can't continue to do these things unless I put in the work, put in the prayers, put in the purification rituals. It's very similar to the Lakota, Nakota, Dakota peoples, and many of the indigenous, of how they purify themselves before prayer, or purify themselves as an aspect of prayer, whether it's sweat lodge and yipi, whether it's Sundance, whether it's any of these dieta, cleaning, purification, clean, clear. There's something to that in my experience, because the cleaner you are, the more you'll be able to feel into things. And so that's why I say, I can only do this up here, because it allows me to do the work necessary to be a clearer channel, or at least as clear as I can be given my current circumstances. Which is why it's important, to work with things like kombuchito, clear, physiologically, but like really energetically. So we're all the indigenous now. And I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form to be disrespectful to the native peoples and the indigenous peoples throughout the world, across the planet, because they have suffered so much and continue to suffer so much. And so for me to, as a white man, to sit up here and say that, it could be misconstrued as disrespectful, and that's not what I mean. That's where I pray that these words are not taken in a disrespectful way by anyone who might be hearing them. And first and foremost, I pray to the Great Spirit and the spirits of this place, the four directions. I'm so very sorry for ever having offended thee, and I'm hoping that I'm not doing that now. I don't feel like I am. It feels fairly clean. So we're all indigenous in terms of what we are facing, I think. And what I mean by that is, aside from like not only the Native Americans, the indigenous people of these lands, but also like the indigenous all over, in jungles, in the deserts, throughout time there's been this force of colonialization and imperial destruction and decimation and exploitation. And in the U.S. it's interesting, I feel that we have never as a society, and when I mean society, I mean it's inclusive of the government, whatnot, but like for the most part the society in general, have never really reconciled with the fact that we committed such an egregious genocide of the Native American people, or the natives of this land, and we never really reconciled the egregious crimes of, the the enslavement of the Africans that were brought here, stolen from their lands and brought here. And those aren't the only two groups that have been destroyed, exploited, over the centuries. There's so many. But I'm talking strictly like right now in the U.S. Because that's my experience. Right? So, what I mean by we are all the indigenous now, we are all as a society facing forces of colonialization and imperial exploitation, and it's if it's not readily apparent, it should be. The COVID thing is a means to an end. A virus that was taken advantage of and hyped to such a degree that the powers that be were able to begin systematically stripping the population at large of their rights, civil liberties. And they've effectively destroyed the middle class. And continue to destroy the middle class. And, this is in order to usher in the Great Reset. The Fed and the central bankers have gotten themselves in such a position to where they have to, in order to get out from under like the enormous debt, governments, they have to allow the central banks to reset the economies, and they'll basically eliminate debt for all these, for everyone, for the most part, and that sounds like a great thing, like, oh, I don't have any debt anymore. But that's to usher in like a central bank digital currency, and those kinds of things will come with strings attached. The large multinational corporations that are sitting on the top of the heap right now, they'll remain there because they'll own assets, tangible assets, land, water, commodities, whatever the case may be, and real estate, on and on and on. But the rest of us won't, and or own very little. And so they'll be debt free, we'll be debt free, but we'll be beholden to the state or government to with a UBI, a universal basic income, to exist, and that will come with strings, whether it's vaccines or immunity passports or whatever. It's just it's a methodology of enslavement and control. And we're moving back into feudalism, a neo-feudalism. If you understand feudalism, it's like the king or the kings are at the top, the nobles are the next level down, the knights, the enforcer class is the next level down, and then there's the peasants. And we're the peasants for the most part. So yeah, we're all the indigenous. We're all peasants, and we are being systematically enslaved, more so than we already are. So, yeah, resist. And then there's this aspect of sovereignty, in a high place. So you can't talk about these things without understanding how they connect. I spoke last time of Wetiko. Wetiko is really trying to take our sovereignty, destroy sovereignty, usurp sovereignty. And the interesting thing about sovereignty is we are all inherently sovereign. So it can't be taken from us. But we can be made to forget it. And so, the medicine path, the yogic path, has always been about remembering, remembering that connection, remembering healing and freedom, remembering that we're sovereign beings. Ultimately, my experience is can only be quantified as I am. I am. I am. It's the only thing that is irrefutable. Everything else, perceived through all these senses is subjective. So, when I think of freedom and sovereignty with that perspective of I am, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And for me, it means there is a desire through the aspect of service, through Hanuman's yoga, that all the things that I care for so deeply, I want them to come with me or be with me in that place of sovereignty, of peace, and I don't feel like I'm there yet, so I'm trying to, bring these concepts with me. And while that might seem foolish, this is the I am speaking. This is the I am, the sovereign being of I am, that my experience while connected to everyone else's experience, that subjective reality thing. The I am wants so much to be free and sovereign, but wants everyone else to be free and sovereign, even if they're conceptual. That concept of love, compassion, the good, the true, and the beautiful. All these things I want to bring with me, into the freedom and the sovereignty of full manifestation. So it reaffirms this idea of it's the bodhisattva thing, right? Tathata Gata Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, I prostrate. There's been more than one Buddha. We're all Buddhas, bodhisattvas, on the continuum of in terms of our evolution. But the I am that is Barry, he's had a few really special bodhisattvas in his life. D! G! So there's this desire to embrace all the things that you love and care for very deeply, and never part with them. And in the conceptual mind, and in the conceptual mind of I am, God, that possibility exists. Yoga's union. Medicine work seems to be a lot of like reconciliation, shadow work, reconciliation of those aspects of like genocide and slavery, reconciliation with a lot of the really dark aspects of ourselves, bringing those things into the I am space of, the good, the true, and the beautiful, the great virtues, love, compassion. There's that aspect or that desire, that strong desire to pull these things in and protect them. So it's interesting, there's always this, going back and forth between the aspects of duality, this personality, this body, all those things out there, and then the aspects of non-duality, where it's all one. And I have a really hard time with that, because there's this really very strong desire, and maybe it's just karma, reincarnation, whatnot, to like bring with me, or at least, grasp and hang on to the things that define me, not only as a personality and a body and a mind, but also in terms of the I am, the good, the true, and the beautiful. So up here in the high place, I am able to connect and through this process of connection, and through even like the process of Jnana Yoga, like the Krishnamurti's yoga, like the yoga of like intellect, and the yoga of Hanuman, the yoga of service, karma yoga, and bhakti yoga, the prostrations to Hanuman and to Ram and to Sita and Lakshman, and I would have no other desire than to accomplish thy will. Teach me to pray, pray thyself in me. Teach me to serve, perform service through me. Amen. That connection. It requires, the purifications and the prayers. Otherwise, it's just gibberish. And this might come through as gibberish anyway. So I thought about sharing another perspective on the high place from maybe across the bowl. And I can't seem to quite do that. I always get pulled here rather than go off into like an exploratory, situation. So for however long that continues, I'll honor that. I'll come up here and I'll pray, and try and make sense of what's happening. Not only for myself, but maybe for someone out there as well. I think a lot of times about Rumi and Hafiz, and how they were so immersed in their love of God, so immersed in like the non-separation from that, and how we find their poetry so absolutely they were alive today, they would be shunned as completely crazy people, probably locked up in some kind of asylum or facility. You know, I'm not saying like I'm Ruby or Hafiz or anything like that, but I know that I don't. I don't go along with the crowd. I don't buy into the hive mind. So I walk a very, singular path, and it's difficult on many levels. And I guess what I'm trying to say to all of you, or anybody that might listen, is, your path is not my path. My path is not your path. May this peace be upon you, and may this, reaffirm the necessity to walk your own path, regardless of what someone might think or say. Now is the time of stepping into your own power, your own sovereignty. Even amongst teachers, amongst authority figures, doctors, curanderos, ayahuasqueros, government officials. You have your own power, your own sovereignty. Never forget that. And we all exercise it differently. What I try and do in this way is bring it forth. Bring Hanuman forth. Hanuman comes through. Always praying to bring that forth. That strength, that impeccability, that healing, that freedom, that good, true, and beautiful. Bring that forth into and through me. Perform service. Great servant of Ram, great servant of Sita, great servant of Lakshmana, Jai Hanumanji, forever and ever and ever and ever.